And we're live. Hello, everybody. My name is Samar Hassan, and I'm the founder of Epiphany. And yes, we're back for our 12th Epiphany Talks. And unfortunately, it's the last one for June. But obviously, we'll be back again in July with some really, really exciting sessions again. So we're super, super delighted because this time around, we will be talking about esports industry, $1 million industry. What does that mean? That means there is a huge economic opportunity inside the sports industry. How can you be esports industry? How can you become part of it? What do you need to do? What sort of raw talent is required? Where is it going? What is the future? All of these topics will be touched upon by our fantastic panelists. So thank you very, very much to my panelists in advance for being here. I hope, as usual, you're going to be sending in your questions through the Facebook comments. If you have joined through the Zoom webinar link, feel free to use the question and answer chat link. All right, so without much ado, I'm going to start welcoming everybody. So first, ladies first, so Tatiana Taka, who is the Director of Esports at Momentum Worldwide, Esports and Gaming thought leader from the US. She's an independent consultant, a thought leader. She's been working for more than 10 years in marketing in esports and gaming. So welcome, Tatiana. How are you?
Doing well. Good to be here. Happy to share some insights and drop some knowledge on this awesome thing called esports.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Next, we have Craig Skilling. Craig, correction. He's a college educator, founder, the influencer brand, and the Esports Skill Academy in the US again. And I think we're going to be able to ask him a lot of questions about what it takes to, to join esports industry as a person and kind of grow over the years. He's also a pro at influencer marketing and entrepreneurship. So welcome, Craig.
Thank you for having me, everybody.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have Todd Harris. Todd is the CEO of Skillshot Media, again from the US. And he's more than 5 years of esports experience in hosting different thousands of global competitors, paying out millions in tournament pricing. So we want to understand a little bit more about that. And first, Todd, could you tell us a little about the photo in the back?
This is from an event that we hosted in Atlanta. It's part of a festival called DreamHack, which actually does events all over the globe. And we partnered with them in Atlanta and Valencia, Spain, and Sweden and Germany. Not yet Pakistan, but one day, hopefully. So happy to be here virtually and talk about esports to this audience.
Thank you so much for joining us, Todd. Next, we've got Dr. Chris Haskell, who is the clinical associate professor and head coach of esports at, I don't know how to pronounce this. Is it Boise State University in the US?
Darn close. Yeah, Boise State. Boise State. Yeah, I'll give you full credit for it.
Okay. Well, at least we tried. So, and yeah, he's got a doc in the middle somewhere that he uses, right? So it's Chris Doc Haskell. Is that how it goes?
You know what? No one calls me Chris. Only I think if I'm in trouble with my mother, do I ever get called Chris. I just go by Doc.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to call you Doc from now on. Again, we're very, very happy to have you here, Doc. He's the head coach of the Varsity Esports and associate clinical professor at Boston State University. And he's done a lot of interesting research and created a course about Facebook, YouTube, and memes. He teaches classes in Minecraft and World of Warcraft. Can I say I would love to be your student? Can I please do that, sir?
Oh, this is the greatest scam I've ever perpetrated.
Awesome. Last but not least, we've got Eric Alexander, who's the founder and president Era Sports, again from the US. It's a one-stop shop it's an esports platform for tournaments, leagues, and team management. Earlier, Eric has had a background in game development and web-based applications, and he's got 3 patents related to financial technology in esports. So welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much, Samar.
Thank you very much for being here. Okay, so may I ask you guys to introduce yourselves a little bit more? And when you're introducing yourselves, perhaps, just outline how you landed in this industry, right? Was it by chance? Was it fluke? Did you always know, oh my God, I want to do this for the rest of my life? What happened? So Tatiana, maybe we can go first with you.
Sure. So as someone growing up, I've always loved video games. And when I was in college, about 10 years ago or so, I knew that video games was particularly interesting, and at that time, mobile gaming was this brand new thing. You know, the iPhone, the BlackBerry was still a thing, and the App Store had just launched, and that was a particularly exciting moment that we were seeing in gaming. So I actually started my career in mobile game development. I was working for different publishers and developers on the marketing launches strategies for different mobile gaming products. And, you know, I didn't necessarily start with the big dogs. It wasn't like right off the bat, Activision Blizzard and or anything like that. It was, you know, starting with startups that happened to have really great licensed IP with the NBA and Halo. And, you know, from there, continuing to view and grow within mobile games. I transitioned over to esports several years ago because mobile gaming eventually became a story of user acquisition, and marketing strategies were about advertisement rather than thoughtful marketing strategy. And esports on paper solves for all of the issues that mobile games, you know, really lack. So if you're looking at gaming as a spectrum, I'd argue that mobile games is often on one side and esports is on the other, where you have a much more kind of very hardcore, passionate audience, no trouble getting them to spend money. This is a, you know, younger, more just immediately valuable cord-cutting segment. And from there, you know, I, for that reason, you know, really started to focus more on the esports space, you know, several years ago. So, you know, that's a little bit about, you know, my experience. I think a lot of folks often as well move from traditional sports into esports because of the traditional sports one-to-one. But you do have a lot of stories as well like this, where, you know, the start comes more from the game development and marketing side.
Okay, thank you, Tatiana. Craig, what about you? And tell us more about the photo in the back as well.
That's a new venture actually, and it probably leads me into how I got involved with esports. So as the program director for a sports management program, almost over 16 years, I'm a product of the sports and entertainment industry. My background was in professional sports, starting out with the Professional National Basketball Association and working for various teams. And I'll tell you, I'm dating myself, but I remember college going back 20 years and how we looked at the sports industry as, wow, you can get a degree in sports management, and everybody kind of looked the other way, my parents included. And you fast forward several years in academia, we saw this. We saw it happening. I'm envious of what Doc has going on over there at Boise State. And we've seen programs and institutions that have done that. And my research interest started to peak, looking at various opportunities for my college students under my program. And just in general, it led me down the path of esports. It was trending, and then it became something more than a trend and something that we needed to look at. I started to write curriculum and kind of bring that to the masses. We formed a gaming club team, and we're still in the process, a little late in terms of industry starting since maybe 2014, but for our market, it's still fairly new on the academic side, but a lot of the schools have done that. What I wanted to do is still immerse myself into it, and the best way I can do it as a father of young boys who, especially during the pandemic, I saw them transition from, you know, on the ground to remote learning, and they were picking up the devices. They weren't responsibly gaming, especially my older son, and I started the academy. So the academy was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to really have an opportunity to give back through relationships that I had. And what we did is we wanted to be able to educate, inform, and inspire some of these young kids that kind of turn into teens and young adults, that this is an industry that they can go into. It's a viable career. We have what's called STEM over here in South Florida, and STEM is all over in terms of education. And it was an area that I sat on a board and I said, we're going to impact younger students and teens. And the way to do it is by having something that's going to show them and teach them responsible gaming. And that's what we do. So we teach them the 20/20 rule, and we bring in, you know, speakers like the panelists we have on here, and then we allow them to game, but game responsibly. We show them the opportunities that exist, and that's where we are present day. So.
That's lovely to hear, Craig, and I'm curious to learn more about responsible gaming, so I'm going to come back to that in a bit. But let's jump to Doc Haskell as well. So what about you? How did you end up doing what you're doing now?
Oh man, I can't even figure it out. They haven't caught me yet, but they will. I'm a professor at Boise State in the College of Education. So I have historically always taught teachers. I was a high school and middle school teacher even before that, but I came to the university and got my advanced degrees, and eventually they just put your name on a door. So that's good news. I was researching esports and gaming clubs simply as a new keynote that I was looking to do. I was looking for new topics, and it just interests me. So I spent about 4 or 5 months researching esports and discovered, this is Todd will recognize this, about 3.5 years ago, there wasn't a lot going on. I think there were 17 schools when I first started investigating, and I reached out to all of the OGs in collegiate esports, people like Kurt Melcher and AJ Dimmick and Kathy Chong and Mark Deppy at UCI, and just gathered as much information as I could, and discovered that esports was about to become very, very big. Craig makes a really good point. It's like it really has evolved fast, and if I brought the idea forward to the university, hey, if we can mobilize quickly, there's an opportunity to really attract students in our area before any of our, regional rival institutions start to offer this as an opportunity. It might give us a way to serve this group of students in a way that we haven't before. And I made the mistake of not nominating somebody who should be in charge of it. And when the dust settled, it was me. I have 3 years now in as a head coach of esports, 4 conference titles over our various games in that time, and oddly enough, over 300 wins as a head coach, which is just that to me is crazy. But for me, this is just an extension of teaching. It's an extension of teaching where the players are the really knowledgeable ones, and the coaches get to come in and help them assess what they know, dig deeper for more knowledge, organize what they know in a way that they can play together and be successful as a team. So, and for those who are, this is not a backdrop. This is actually, well, it is a backdrop. It's just this is our live esports arena where we do all of our live events. Our players play on that stage to a crowd, and we broadcast from this space as well. In fact, I'm sitting up here actually on our broadcast desk as we speak. So.
Oh wow, fantastic! Yeah. Thank you so much. It's so exciting. I want to be there. I wish, already because of COVID, it's like everybody's invited to our houses, right? So I'm welcoming you to my home and vice versa. Craig is hiding. I mean, we can't see what's in the background. But I'm assuming it's something not so interesting.
No, it's home office right now.
So I mean, yes, I think all of us have had to do that. It's been like a crash course in learning, but I think that's one of the things which is really exciting for us right now in Pakistan, because this is something which is new, which is growing. We see the opportunity, and we want to, like you said, we want to stay ahead of the curve, and we want to jump in. So for me, this is how we're doing our learning, right? So we're not just learning ourselves, but we're also educating everybody, our community, so they can learn. But a very interesting note, okay, just a quick anecdote. So in my past life, I worked at an organization that was setting up a liberal arts and sciences university in Pakistan. So I can totally understand when you said that, when the dust settled, it was me. This is exactly what used to happen to us at Habib University. Whoever had the idea, well, you had the idea, you have to fly with it. That's it. It's your responsibility. Who cares what else you were doing? Oh, you have to do that too. Eric, we didn't hear your story. Tell us yours.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm Eric Alexander, president, founder, former CEO, I guess, of Esports. It's kind of funny how I got into this. I remember when I was 12, and I heard Tatiana, you mentioned Halo 1. We used to do LAN parties after school, and this, we thought it was the coolest thing. Bring 4 Xboxes together and play with 16 people in tournaments. I never in my wildest dreams thought it would develop into the industry that it's forming right now. So I guess essentially I never grew up. I just got smarter. um, and I guess how I ended up starting Esports was I went to school, web programming, database design at a local tech school here. Discovered I loved modding games. The game that I built tons of mods for is called Arma 3. It's a pseudo open source game. So I was building mods, and I'm looking at, I'm looking at the tournament platforms that were in existence at the time, and they weren't where they needed to be. The technology was lagging. It was like, there wasn't a ton of time and effort, it appeared, that was being spent on sort of upgrading the technology. So that's what I did. I started building it in college. I built a prototype, Windows Forms with an SQL backend. That wasn't scalable. So I did the next best thing that I could. I found someone that taught me how to write patents, who's now my CEO, actually. He's a patent attorney from MIT. Really smart guy. I'm incredibly lucky to have him. But yeah, we found out there's a lot of stuff actually that's patentable on the platform. And then we brought on some better developers than I. We built it out into a scalable form. Yeah, we just completed our closed beta testing about a month ago. So yeah, we're just continuing to grow.
Okay, that's excellent. That's really, really heartening to see, right? So when entrepreneurs are doing well, it gives me personal satisfaction, especially when they're doing entrepreneurship in a new area. So I'm going to ask questions. Feel free to jump in, whoever wants to answer this one. So we're just talking about how suddenly it's grown, it's rocketing now, how it started. People are reflecting how they never imagined it would grow to this state. So can somebody map the trajectory of esports, where it was, where it is now, and where do we think it's headed?
I can hit that because it kind of overlaps with my own personal entry since I'm old, so I can cover all of esports in my own lifetime.
By the way, in the email that I sent across, I did put down Todd's name there. So, haha.
Nice. So, well, when I was growing up, you would buy a single player game in a retail store and you would put it in your device and you would play it by yourself. And that was my exposure to video games. But, there've been a number of innovations that have really catapulted the industry forward to now being $140 billion gaming and esports together. So, and I'll just give you my top three. One of them is simply the invention of the internet, the fact that you can connect with other people all over the world and play in a cooperative or competitive format. That was my dream, 7th grade, Todd. It was imagining one day when this awesome experience that I was having in my bedroom or basement could be shared with my friends, even though they were at their house because I couldn't drive yet. So the idea of actually playing with them was just a dream, but the internet made that happen. So that's number one. A second big innovation was this development of the free-to-play business model, because so many of the most popular esports games, instead of paying $60 one time, it's free to get started, but the publisher has a business incentive to keep you playing the game for a long time. And that's actually, from a game development standpoint, that gave a lot of juice, economic support from companies like Riot with League of Legends, because their business incentive depends on people playing the game for a long time, which means they update the game, they host competition, they started to put forth prizing. So it's actually one of the biggest reasons that we have an esports industry, is because it supports the developers' economic interests. So that's number two. And then a third is live streaming. Of course, now we're we're using technology to connect, and a lot of people will talk about Twitch, which is the preeminent platform outside of China that has about 70% of the viewership on it. And what Twitch allowed is a great player not just to be famous for their household or their neighborhood or the neighborhood arcade. For me, being on the top of the leaderboard at Donkey Kong, that was about as good as I could get, unless I wanted to hop around to other arcades. But with Twitch, anyone, no matter where they grow up, they can compete with the best in the world, and they can shine a spotlight and have their content be available to the entire world for free. So a kid in Pakistan, there's nothing preventing them from being the best in the world other than a little access to technology, time, talent, mastery. So all those things together have just kind of made esports really grow from those days of the neighborhood arcade.
Yeah, if we look at the growth of esports in particular, in just the last couple of years, that growth and evolution has really been astronomical. I'd say, in particular, and for background, so what I do is, I work directly with brands on sponsorship, consultation, brand activation, development of strategy, helping them find the right partners and activations to get into, the esports space. And sponsorship is one of those key revenue drivers, and it's a crucial component for a lot of esports properties. And when I think about, in particular, how much esports has grown just in the last couple of years, it's really evolved quite significantly into something much more closer to traditional sports in the way that it's able to execute its own leagues and team kind of assets, as well as what it's able to deliver for brands. So I like to say that 2017 was the year of traditional sports really getting more into esports, doing a lot of, that's when we especially started to see a lot of esports teams doing direct investment within the esports space. 2018 was the year where we saw, the franchise leagues really come into play, as well as titles, the battle royale scene really take shape, and Fortnite really kind of launched then. 2019 was when we started to see more brand activation specific to influencers, and I'd say influencers starting to become almost as powerful as leagues themselves. And I like to kind of share that timeline, because esports and gaming and the opportunities and how it's transitioning, it's continually evolving. The different the different trends and opportunities to take part, the titles themselves, even in certain cases, what's kind of a big title in the moment. What's nice about esports is there is a consistency of titles, but there's also trending things to consider within all of that. So it's really fun to kind of see how that continues to evolve and how things continue to change. I think what's crucial for folks watching is to think about how does it affect your country and your community. These are the stories that that we're seeing primarily in the US and EU in particular, but every country, every culture has their own experience as it relates to esports and gaming titles, and the teams and talents that directly impact this audience. So when thinking about what is the future and being forward thinking, it's really important to understand that relationship.
So one of the things that Todd mentioned, which was very interesting, is how anybody from Pakistan or anywhere can actually compete at an international level. And it's, as long as you've got good internet and you understand how to play the game, and you're just, I guess, really addicted. So you can just go ahead and play and become better at it, right? So I'm terrible at games, by the way. So I have a lot of shame in saying that practically the only few games that I've played are Mario Brothers, and I used to be awful at that. My sister used to beat the crap out of me. But anyway, there's no other way to say this. But one of the things that we do see again and again is how it can just become this, this craze, and people will just keep playing games nonstop. So I actually wanted to poke you guys and try to understand the negative impact of this. And when you say responsible gaming, so maybe we can jump to Craig first. So Craig, you mentioned responsible gaming. So what does that mean, and how do you kind of instill that in people who are trying to explore this? And obviously it's really exciting, and it's it's like it's like the first version of Facebook when you used to get this like and everybody used to be happy. Oh, okay, somebody's liked me. There was this positive feeling. So obviously it's the same with gaming. So how would you respond to that? And then I want to jump with this question about the research that we've got a researcher who studied this impact in great detail. So Craig, over to you.
All right. So to really understand responsible gaming, we have to put it on a global scale, where the World Health Organization came out and actually had to identify this as a potential disease, right, within gaming. Then, the pandemic hit, and they came right back out and said, no, go ahead and game for a little bit. But the fact that they considered this as a disease, gaming in itself, was something that, was alarming. Take myself, I'll put on my parent hat. I just said, well, whoa, what are you talking about? Let me look for these signs. Let me make sure I'm looking at kids. I'm having these conversations with other parents. And when we really did a little bit of more research on it, I had a conversation with a gentleman who works formerly for the Mamba Sports Academy, now called the Sports Academy. You may have heard of Kobe Bryant, no longer with us, the NBA player. He founded that organization. So they were already on top of this in terms of having the training to really implement in all of their programs. Any type of activity, they embedded esports into the curriculum. So the idea was a lot of the kids, and we're talking about development ages, so we're at youth and then teens, so on and so forth. And what they were seeing is, from an adult, and I'm sure Doc and Todd and everybody else can attest to this from their professional gamers, there were injuries that were coming into play, injuries that some could attest. The one gentleman who's actually over that program, he told me, he's probably a 29-year-old gentleman now. He said when he was 12 years old, the way that he was gaming, he has a lasting impact today. And that's why he shows. So whether it's his hands, whether it's from just the overall posture, right, in terms of how they were sitting and what they were doing, there are lasting things that came about. So when we talk about responsible gaming, it's the mental, it's the cognitive, right? It's the physical, it's bringing attention and awareness to, this is a sport. They are athletes, but you have to treat yourself like an athlete. The right nutrition, what do you eat? What is those brain power foods for you to go ahead and make these split second decisions in some of these games? They have to train as if they are going right out in a boxing match. Whatever it is, they are athletes. And that's something that has taken its toll on individuals that aren't as versed in the industry. Imagine having to tell a parent, your child is 11 or 10 years old, whatever it may be. But if they're playing that amount of hours, you have to worry about their eyes, the impact of screen time, even if they're not playing games. How much there's glasses that are made specifically to just help them, in terms of how they're looking. I talked about the 20-20-20 rule. 20 minutes of gaming, you're supposed to, or 20 minutes of on a device, we should be able to stop, look away for 20 seconds, about 20 feet away, and then come back and reconnect, get everything back right, our visual, our mind, slow it down and keep going. So all of that, there's a lot to it. There's the education part of it to understand. Sometimes, we think, we can just pick up and do this task easily, right? Or we can go back out there and shoot a basketball, and I'm a 60-year-old man and I'm going to play competitively and I haven't trained for 20 years. Something may happen. It's the same way.
No, thank you, Craig. I think that's really important, especially for parents, because this is something which perhaps, I'm perhaps talking to the wrong crowd, right? Like I said, I'm not a gamer, but my daughter, who's 10 years old, obviously she's interested in games. And there's a constant battle between my husband and I as well. How much time can she spend on the internet? What's supposed to happen? We went through this whole debate. Should she have her YouTube channel? Can she not have her YouTube channel? Things like that, right? So I think these are little, these are concerns which are very, very real. So Doc, over to you, right? You've done research on the impact of video games, virtual worlds, social media, digital culture. what do you think are kind of like the pros and the cons?
Couple things. So when in 2011 and 2012, Dr. Lisa Dali and I built a tool we called it at the time 3D Game Lab. It's the base form of it's now called Resli. It was basically the first game-based learning management system out there, and it's been cloned in a lot of different places. Classcraft is loosely based on our research and what we built. There's a lot of tools out there for game-based learning, and the interest that we had was that there are certain reward pathways that exist in video games. Todd knows all about them because they build in those reward pathways, triggered by animation, triggered by sound, triggered by certain feedback loops that we are interested in. Television shows have used them, movies, music. All media is willful manipulation. We go to the movies, we go to a scary movie because we want to be manipulated in that way. We enjoy that process, and we're rewarded when we survive the horror movie. So we were interested in looking at what those reward loops look like and how do we trigger those in learning? How do we make someone who's really enjoys completing things, or is a puzzle solver, or is competitive conqueror? Lots of different play styles. They go all the way back. Well, Bateman and Nacky have done a ton of work on that. If anybody's interested in looking into that, Chris Bateman and Leonard Knack. They've done a ton of work into basically the brain chemistry of rewards during gameplay. We've been very interested in those things because we engage in them all the time. They're not scary. They're part of our our evolutionary process. They keep us alive. They keep us healthy and entertained. What we have to concern ourselves with in anything, it's not just games, it's exercise, it's television, it's romance, anything that takes us out of balance with the other phases of our lives is something that we have to talk about. As a coach, I have the opportunity to provide moral authority and moral leadership for students who would otherwise be gaming without that. So as their coach, I can say, you know what, you spent a little bit too much time over the last 24 hours, because I can track all your online time. Let's take today off. You get some sleep, get caught up in your classes, eat, drink a lot of water, and then let's talk about this tomorrow. Engaging with young people in their gaming habits allows us to teach adult habits over the top of something that they love to do. It's never worked to try to throw out completely something that people enjoy doing or using. There's usually a lot of pushback. In the US, look back to Prohibition. It was troubling. So I would offer this. There's a ton of research out there on the way that our brain offers those dopamine loops and rewards, and for different reasons. If that is an interest, and it goes right back to these phones and devices that we have too. The buzzes fire that micro dopamine loop. Those understanding that those outcomes are not terminal and that we can continue to influence them over someone's development in lifetime is a really encouraging thing. I'm not worried about game addiction any more than I'm worried about exercise addiction or food addiction or drama addiction. I deal with college students, so there's some people are addicted to drama. But I think that's the right place to begin that part of the conversation.
So I know that Eric was unmuting himself. Did you want to add something to that, Eric?
No, I was actually going to sort of comment on the first question, but I like this health aspect. In fact, we actually did a panel here in Minnesota where that was the focus, was healthcare and esports, and I attribute it sort of to the NFL, where if we had known about concussions a long time ago, we could have taken preventative measures, and it would save a lot of heartache, a lot of money, a lot of time. We need to do the same stuff with esports. Like kids they're starting young, so we like what you're talking about, eye strain, blue light. That stuff we need to be telling people about.
I think that's a really, really valid point. And again, it goes back to how we can educate ourselves before the act itself, before it's too late. So Tatiana,
Exactly.
but so I'm changing gears now. I want to also talk about some of the positive impacts, right, of playing and playing professionally. Todd, you want to say something, but I want to jump to Tatiana as well. So
I just wanted to, I think there were great comments. I would just say, and I'm a parent, in addition to being a gamer, spending 15 years creating games, I'm a parent of gamers. And so I think the thing to keep in mind is that every activity is replacing some other activity. So you're weighing the pros and cons. And in the case of gaming, when you compare it to sports, maybe it is replacing something like football, where the data is pretty clear to me as a parent on head injuries versus wrist injuries. Both are a risk, but you just have to weigh the risk for your child. And similarly, when you look at screen time, for most of the gamers, that tends to displace passive watching of television. And the distinguishing feature of gaming as a media is you are the protagonist. It's all about making choices and taking action. So if you're watching less TV and playing a game, already that simple step, you have agency. And when you engage in esports, you're taking that agency even farther and you're setting life goals. So it's always trade-offs between time. And as a parent, much as I think, Doc and Craig both mentioned, I personally never limited screen time. For me, didn't make any more sense than limiting book time. But I paid a lot of attention to the content that was being consumed, and I really emphasized balance. So there were other activities like friends, family, and physical activity that had to be a part of it. But gaming is one of the most positive forces in the world that we have right now. So, I can't say that strong enough. I've seen it in my own life, in my son's life, and in the lives of so many youth out there. So it has to be delivered appropriately, but it is a force for good when delivered appropriately.
I want to be witness to Todd's dinner table where his son is absolutely demanding a Cocopelli rework. Come on, Dad, totally broken.
Yeah, it's tough when you're a game designer and your son is invested in that game. You try to, not give him the exploits.
Well, thank you so much. That was really, really great. So yes, Tatiana, I wanted to ask you about, sure, add your comment, but then I also wanted to ask you about the positive skills.
For sure. I fully agree with Todd. I think there's a lot of stereotypes that go against gaming. This perception of this nerd and kind of away from society and kind of shielded off from everything. But the reality is this is a very social activity. Our own data shows that it helps bridge gaps of cultures. It helps people, connect with like-minded folks. This is a space of connection, of community, and positive environment. And there's a lot of stereotypes that tend to go against that. And I do think it hurts the game industry. When we kind of talk about, the health of spending too much time gaming, when there are other things that you could do with that time that aren't as productive. I just did a activation for one of our clients in partnership with Twitch. It was with a pharma brand called Merck, specializing in multiple sclerosis. On paper, an interesting partnership for a pharma brand to be activating in gaming. But the reality is it made so much sense because the theme was all about connections and getting people, together and how gaming is this positive pastime for a lot of folks. So I think that's quite crucial. It's, there's a lot of communication, there's a lot of skills development. There's also concern about video game violence. Let's say CSGO is among one of the most popular, most well-watched esports titles globally, but a lot of brands are very hesitant to partner with it because of its thematics around terrorism and counterterrorism and an M-rated title. But the reality of that esport is there's overarching stories of tactics and strategy and leadership and teamwork and a lot of really positive, components to this game. but it tends to be overshadowed by the immediate thematic that, you know, you're seeing right in front of you. So I think it's crucial to really keep that in mind, because there are a ton of positive benefits of gaming, and that's as well why I think a lot of brands are looking at the space. It's a valuable audience, certainly, but it's also, you know, a place that there's very positive messages that can be ingrained in that.
No, I think I can relate totally, right? I think decision making, that's one of the things. Strategy, I think there's so many things that you learn while you're playing games, not to mention teamwork, leadership, organizing yourself. Obviously discipline comes with it as well. Confidence, you know, communication. So I recently, my daughter, she was singing at the top of her lungs. I go in and I'm just like, what are you doing? And she was actually singing, you know, on this platform called Amino. And I had no idea about it, right? And I was like, okay, show it to me. And initially she thought I was going to be a dragon and tell her, no, you can't play this anymore, or you can't engage. And I was like, just show it to me. Let me understand who these people are that you're communicating with and what information you're revealing. So I think as parents, we're also very cognizant, that is that scare as well about the security aspect of things, because we do hear about negative, you know, the forces of evil that are out there, right? But anyway, okay, so I'm going to jump course again, okay? Unless Craig wants to add something, because he's unmuted himself. Craig, yes, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, we were talking about opportunities. I mean, just look at everybody on this panel. The fact that if you take a search right now and you go on LinkedIn and just type in esports, the amount of you know, opportunities that we're looking at, it's you know, beyond what we could have ever imagined. So that's something to kind of see, where is it trending? And you know, there's some that are just waiting for this bubble to pop. And the fact that just the other day, if you look at a game like Fortnite, right, by Epic Games, and you look at you know, a guy by Mr. Belvin's, what's his Ninja is his title, how just last year alone he earned $30 million in revenue from Mixer, right? And then we look at an NBA athlete who's playing a game and going on the road, thinking of like Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? International guy, $26 million, right? Did I do good with that, Doc? So I don't know why I picked that name. I just remembered his salary. $26 million. So in 1 year, you know, that individual generated more revenue. This esports is projected, if we're looking, you know, even further on, besides the National Football League, because Tatiana, everybody's mentioned the comparison to traditional sports. We have to take it even beyond serious. When we look at how do these athletes get paid? Where does all this money come from? And well, a big part of it is the television, right? Television rights, the media deals. And that is where it's crazy, and it's keep going and it's not stopping. So I think that in itself is something so intriguing. And if somebody's just watching this now for the first time, I would have to be able to say, where do I fit in? You know, it's not, you don't have to be the gamer, but if I'm a young person and I'm developed right, yes, I have the opportunity to go ahead and continue on, but I may want to go a little bit beyond that and be on Todd's side, and right, and I'm creating and I'm in the back end, right? Everybody brings something to the table. So it's phenomenal. I'm in awe of it still, and still learning myself. And the idea is to let individuals know that this is something that's here to stay.
Okay, so Vernetta has asked a question, so let's take that. So she's saying there's learning the skill and learning the skill in a way that it's transferable. Is that message getting across? So you can learn strategy, but are the players learning that skill in a way that helps them with schoolwork, life situations, and so on?
Can I touch on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So this, I was very, I guess, very lucky to have had something fall into our lab. So for part of our closed beta testing, we actually ran the Minnesota High School Varsity League up here. And that, so being a part of that league, I got to witness these kids playing with each other, and the communication, hands down, you need to have good communication, especially with a game like League of Legends, where you need to know where your teammates are. You need to work together. If you have a guy just running down his lane, that's, you know, he's not being a team player, you're not going to win. It's a parallel with normal sports too. And in my mind, I see that carrying over. I see kids learning to work together. They accomplish more. They figure, you know, if we strategize and come up with a plan, we do better. So that's how I see it translating over.
So can I quickly insert here and find out, are you all gamers over here? Yes? Okay, so what are your favorite games, and can we reflect for a second some of the skills that you may have learned, which you're actually able to apply to the real world now? So Eric has given his example. Maybe you can start off with, who hasn't spoken for a while? I think it's Doc. He's been awfully quiet.
Well, I'll refer to that machine right over there. I'll call that one my favorite. It's a 750 different title, essentially an emulator cabinet. And Todd, it's got we're playing Donkey Kong on that sucker.
Nice.
I'm gonna have to get warmed up because usually about the time I get to elevators, if I'm not focused, I fall apart. So he knows the level I'm talking about here. So for me, those were the original social games where you would go to a location where these other cool kids and great players were, and you would watch them. You would ask them questions if you felt comfortable. You'd put your quarter on the machine, on the marquee or on the bezel to signal you wanted to go as soon as they were done with it. It was very social. This idea, people are like, isn't this crazy? Why would anybody want to watch people play video games? I spent most of my youth in an arcade just in awe of these people who could play, Space Invaders for 40 minutes on one quarter. Those were the people I wanted to, learn more from. And it's not a new thing at all. So I would say that because there'll be other great examples of games that the traditional arcade games, or even, as Todd's talking, playing on that Atari console or that ColecoVision or Intellivision, and going over to a friend's house and just watching them play these one-player games and then just trading back and forth. Incredibly social because it revolved around a skill that we wanted to know more about. We wanted that knowledge. We wanted to socialize around it, which is what we do constantly on all of our social media and YouTube. My wife absolutely adores this baker who does all this really cool stuff with sourdough starts, and just is glued to the teaching, of that. Is it more valuable than what we learn from each other around how to play a game? No. It's a vehicle for socialization and for engagement.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Todd.
Yeah, I could name a lot of arcade titles that Doc would know, but others might not. I think that when it comes to transferable skills, I mean, the simple way to think about it is everything you get out of traditional sports, with the exception of physical fitness, which you have to inject, but those same lessons come from esports. Teamwork, mastery, competitiveness, sportsmanship, they all translate. So if as a parent, you want your kid to play sports, but maybe not too much, you could still risk injury. You could do it too much. That's the same lens you should look at with gaming. And then when it comes to the particular game, you can kind of think of a spectrum between using a tremendous amount of strategy, and then on the other end is using a tremendous amount of hand-eye quick reflexes. And games that are successful fall somewhere along that continuum. It's actually a triangle if you want to draw it out. You can't demand a tremendous amount of strategy and hand-eye reflexes because it's too taxing on your brain. So you have a game like Quake or Unreal where you're jumping around and it's all hand-eye reflexes and thinking very, very quickly. And then you have a game like, let's just say chess, to take it out of the video game realm entirely, that is much more strategic and you have time to consider your move. And you get benefits from both of those. The hand-eye games, they literally translate into surgeons being better surgeons and drivers being better drivers. And in fact, if you play an FPS game, you're going to do better on a cognitive test afterwards. That's just a general IQ test, even though that's more in the quick reflex category. So all those games have different values. They appeal to different player types, but they all have skills that translate outside the real world. It is, as many people have emphasized, just around balance and helping the child make that jump, that it shouldn't occupy 100% of that time. They can take those skills and apply them elsewhere.
Yeah, there was
Tatiana.
a game. There was a game that was recently announced, launched. It's a video game that is actually a medicine meant to treat kids with ADHD. So that is a perfect example of a video game that is actually a prescribed medication for kids.
Absolutely. So we've got examples of that in Pakistan as well, using augmented reality for children who are autistic. We do have examples of, also motor skills, learning that it is engaging. So we've talked a lot about that. There are concerns coming in as well. I mean, I think people do worry about this, that they do go overboard and waste precious time. They prioritize this over other things. But again, they're happy that everybody's sharing their perspective. I do want to shift gears, and maybe I'm going to start with Craig this time first. Talking about different, well, actually the original question is for Tatiana. So perhaps Tatiana, what do you mean when you say experiential activation for brands and gaming properties? What does that exactly mean?
Sure. So, the term experiential refers to live events, physical experience. So when an esports final is taking over a massive sold out stadium, or when 70,000 people fly to E3 or PAX or wherever to, go to a live gaming convention, those are quintessential moments of experiential. I like to talk a lot about the fact that there's I'd say a very big white space in terms of the opportunity at events like this, and opportunities for brands to, play a larger role in experiential activation around esports and gaming. During COVID, obviously, that's something that's been impacted. The thing I like to say about esports is it's not COVID proof, but it's very close. So these experiential moments have been taken away. And these are key times where esports, I'd say, continues to evolve. Every time we sell out another stadium, or, we put on a phenomenal AR experience that transcends what, live production, stage production can be. Esports continues to evolve, and so that's a key miss. So a lot of what I focus on as well is thinking about the digital experience, and people's engagement with live streaming and gaming, and how that experience can be more interactive and more engaging by nature. So just to kind of better define that, that's how I'm thinking about it.
Well, Tatiana, I'm going to add, and you can appreciate this, Fortnite, that game, concerts post-COVID, it hits our country, it hits the world. And what do we still see happening? We still, esports is embedded. We see concerts embedded into the video game world, right?
Yeah.
I remember watching my son, hey, Papa, come watch this. Who is it? It's a DJ, it's Marshmello. It's Travis Scott. He's doing a concert live. And then I'm like, well, let me look at this. And you do a little more research, and you see the amount of engagement, the impressions from marketing. And there's no way that individual artist would have gotten that same experience if he just did a one-off tour, right? Then this was a 5-day event that they did within the game. They put it out. It was genius to kind of see. So that kind of ties into the question in terms of experiential activations and getting creative from the digital world. And that's not going to stop. The more brands that can identify opportunities to embed those in them, because you had asked the question earlier about, our games originally. And I'm like, Doc, I remember the Mario Brothers and the Donkey Kong. And then I was more on the sports games titles. And it got to the point where I'm watching kids and my own and seeing that every time, every other day, Poppy, I need more V-Bucks. I need more this for that game. It's asking me for that. I tell them, well, I would have bought that game 15 times over if you think about it. So it's for us to understand, but it's amazing.
So, so recently we have observed this partnership between the team Fnatic with Gucci. But do you think that brands are utilizing it enough for visibility purposes, or is this still untapped? What more can brands do? Sure, Tatiana, yes.
Very much so. I would say it's definitely very untapped, but partnerships like that really showcase the opportunity to really think about things that transcend again these biases that people may have about esports. The fact that luxury brands like Gucci and Louis Vuitton are not just finding amazing collaborations and partnerships that are super specific to esports and this gaming culture, but also the fact that they don't feel the need to hold back on that pricing and that it's selling out, in the 2 days that it's available. That showcases the flexibility of esports. It showcases this as a creative solution. It shows that there are literally endless options and opportunities for collaborations and partnerships that exist in this space. We've already started to see that because just the sheer amount of categories that are active. But when you have brands like that in particular, the hyper high-end luxury brands, what that shows is, again, just how valuable this audience is, that it's high spending, that it's high income, that there's a ton of, appreciation and cultural value.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that point can be made too strongly, that brands are severely underinvesting in this space. A lot of it is a fairly fragmented space because it's new. So there's a lot of different partners and inventory to choose from. Do I sponsor a team or an event or buy ads on Twitch or go with an influencer? So it can be challenging, but the things that are very clear is that this industry is massive. I mean, you just have to not think about esports, think about gaming, and it's bigger than all of the film industry and all of the music industry put together.
Absolutely.
So that should get your attention. And it's also, if you look at the demographics and you see what the next generation is into, if you want to reach that next generation of consumer or worker, how do you be relevant? You got to be down with what they're down with. And they don't say down anymore, by the way.
I do.
But we do on this call. But we get it enough to know where the attention is, and everything is ultimately a battle for attention, and gaming and esports has it. So it's actually a very underpriced resource for brands right now. Like, it's a bargain, but a lot of the decision makers are candidly older, and they're stuck in traditional ways that worked when they were growing up, like buying ads on TV, even though the audience is moving away from that. So yeah, we're just getting started in this industry in terms of brands.
So a couple of final questions, and I think absolutely, Todd, I think if I was a brand manager and I wanted to engage with a younger audience, especially the audience that is going to become richer and richer over time, over the years, they're going to grow up, earn more money, have more disposable income, etc. This is how I would engage with them. It's a no-brainer. But a couple of final questions, I think, because I know that we're nearing the end of our session today. So, Doc, I wanted to ask you, the role of coaches. So, is esports coaching as rewarding, as other coaching like Formula One or FIFA? What would you say?
I would think that it is. It's just as challenging and just as rewarding as any opportunity you have to teach other folks. You are trying to organize a group of people to do something that they can't do on their own individually at the same level. We are greater than the sum of our parts. And so it is a process. I think all coaching and all teaching is a process. You don't ever really arrive at a conclusion. You find little moments along the way that show that you're heading in the right direction, but the journey is never done. And we joke all the time. Before we were live, I held this up to my face, which is just one of the laminated sheets that is match prep for us. Esports, especially in organized team level, is about bringing a plan together, organizing our beliefs and identifying and aligning our communication systems, practicing what we intend to perform, and then testing to see if we can do it. Then we take that evidence, win, lose, whatever happened in between, and we formulate that into a new plan and move forward, which is the basic building block of any successful career in anything. Todd mentioned all of the things that you can learn from esports. We probably need to move as quickly as we can away from this idea of good or bad. All activity, whether you do it or find it palatable or not, is the development of skills, testing of theories, development of many things that will eventually lead you to the next thing. And I don't like to invoke myself as an example. There is no career path 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that leads you to be a professor of video games. It is a collection of all of the things that a person would do. Todd the same way. He didn't go to game developer camp, when he was 7th grade. Todd, he chased his interests. He tried to get good at everything he did. I'm sure that Tatiana and Craig and Eric are the same way. They kept diving into the things that they were passionate about, trying to get good at them, learn as much as they could, meet as many people as they could, and that continues to develop over time. The entry rung of this ladder for many may be video games. We shouldn't discount it. We should encourage our folks to become good at anything that they're truly passionate about, because it'll lead somewhere that they can't imagine.
Absolutely. And I'd love to add to that really quickly as well. I think for folks who are listening who are really passionate about esports and want to develop, essentially find a career in the space, the recommendation that I'd provide is to create your own experience. Collegiate esports is a great example of this. It's a thing that exists now that just did not exist when we were in college. To the actual opportunity to develop, to create your own experience. If there's not an immediate thing, that internship or whatever that you can participate in, immediate job opportunities, go and create your own grassroots tournaments, create your own collegiate team, create clubs and programs, and take a much more proactive approach, because the tools and ability to do so is so much stronger than ever before. And I'd say that's a pretty powerful thing if you are taking that on.
Bill Gates famously took the bus in the middle of the night to the University of Washington to get computer time when computer time was just not available to high school kids, certainly not 15-year-olds. It's that kind of pursuit of passion that you find in all truly successful people. No one gives you permission to chase something that hasn't been invented yet. It's entirely up to you.
Thank you so much, Doc. I think that's a beautiful message. So I'm just going to quickly ask everybody for their key messages that they want to, share with our audience. Yes, Eric, I think you want to say something. Do you? Or you want to think about your message?
Yeah, I can share a message.
Okay.
I guess, I think I'll actually tie this back into the very first question of where do you think esports is going? And I think the big difference between traditional sports and esports are the spectators. NFL spectators do not have the ability, the skill to compete on a level even close to the pros. Well, that's different with gaming and esports. The spectators, they have the will, they have the ability and the drive to compete in their own tournaments. So I think going forward, that's the shift we're going to see, is sort of, I don't think the top 0.01% of players, that won't fade away, but I think we'll slowly see the leveling of the playing field as more opportunities come for stuff such as the minor leagues. As that grows and expands. I mean, it's huge. There's a ridiculous number of gamers in the world, all over it, and we need more opportunities for them to kind of rise up in the ranks.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Eric. Yes, Todd?
Closing thoughts, I guess, with Eric's thought about the future. I mean, gaming will be the most inclusive activity on planet Earth. It is not there today. It is impressively diverse in many ways. 46% of the game players are female, for example, but many of those great performers, gamers, are not shown on the world stage. And as an industry, we still have a long way to go. But what we have as a fundamental in gaming is that the activity itself doesn't involve physicality. So whether you're a man or woman, you're 6 feet tall, you're not built like a linebacker, you can compete. So that, as a founding principle, is very, very unique. Also, access, as I mentioned before, is incredible. Not all of the world has internet yet, but we're well on our way. Not all the world has technology, but we are well on our way, particularly with mobile. And, you know, I, as a kid, I didn't have an ice hockey rink near me. I was never going to be an ice hockey player because I grew up in the South and that wasn't available. The reason soccer is so popular is it just takes a field and a round object. Well, gaming is going to be soccer plus plus. So it will be the most inclusive, community-driven activity. We've got work together to get there, but that's where we're headed. And we're like on year 2 of this journey. It took the NFL 100 plus years to get to where it is. So we're on hyper speed, inventing the sport and entertainment media of the future. And we're just encouraging more people to help get on board. And for parents, kids that are inspired by video games, they may not ever work in video games. They may just work in the technology industry or in an entirely different industry. But it's a gateway to many, many good things. And we're just looking for partners to help deliver that goodness together.
So I went mute in the middle. So thank you so much, Todd. I think that's really the thought that we can move towards. I think inclusion, we talked a little bit about how there are different games for differently abled people. Tatiana, there is a question also. So if you could answer and just put down the name of the game somebody's asked. Craig, I'm going to ask you for your final thoughts as well.
Yeah, definitely. Everything that's been said is spot on. I mean, I think you'll see I just changed my virtual background.
I did.
Podcast called Behind the Influencer, and everybody on this call right now and watching is an influencer, and really that is the message. And you know, having an opportunity to work with professional athletes, entertainers, and a lot of these social media influencers, and really digging in behind what they did and how they started, the consistency behind them, whether it was the work ethic for their craft and all of that. It's something that we can all take, you know, a lead on doing ourselves, no matter who it is. But we all have a message to share. Here in the States, there's an opportunity for more minorities to get involved in the sport. And I think that's something where it has to start at the lower level. And that's things that we're doing here. And once we realize that, and parents are educated a little bit more to see this viable option for even studies first, and then maybe going on in terms of career athletics, that they are athletes. So it's all in the messaging. And once people are convinced that it is something that is a viable option for them, you'll see the participation continue to increase.
You know, I'm just smiling because I have a selfish interest, right? So game development is super, super expensive. I want Ishil to design a few games that I would really like to get designed, right? My daughter's name is Ishil. So yeah, I have a selfish interest. There you go. Anyway, okay, yes, Tatiana.
Yeah, so the thing I'd say is, you know, in addition to, you know, kind of make your own experience, really, you know, ensure that you have a strong passion and let that really drive you. You know, I think that's absolutely crucial. From a parent's perspective, you know, I really, you know, quite strongly recommend to kind of hold judgments or perceptions, and really, you know, really take the time to understand the games that your kids are playing, and you know, find ways to support that, or you know, even be more of an active participant within that. You know, overall, as mentioned earlier, esports is growing quite significantly, and where esports kind of lands and evolves, you know, specific to your culture and country is, you know, is going to be quite unique to other, you know, other parts of the world. So it's also really important to understand, you know, the nuances of how gaming is growing, you know, within your own experience, and help that to kind of evolve into a more active, you know, esports community. So that's, I guess, some parting thoughts.
Okay, all right. Doc, did you want to add anything?
Let's get out there. Let's win.
Yeah, that's a great final thought. Okay, so quick
Spoken
poll.
like a true coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just like, oh my God, I want to go and I want to just do this now. So fantastic. I think, you know, I think some people are really suited for what they're doing in life, right? Not everybody is lucky or privileged enough to get there. And I think if people can find their purpose, there's nothing more beautiful than that. So look, quick final, there's a poll that I'm going to ask you. What would you prefer, a horror game versus an action adventure game? Yes, both of them?
Is it a single player or multiplayer?
Oh, a multiplayer.
I'm action.
Action adventure for me.
Okay.
Action. If it's horror and it's in VR, I might go for it just for the total immersion of it, but more action adventure.
Okay. Craig, also action adventure. Doc?
Action adventure.
Okay. Aaron?
It really depends upon the day for me. Right now, probably action adventure, but don't get me wrong. Soma is one of my favorite horror games ever. It was so well done.
Awesome. All right. So with this, thank you very, very much for being here with us. I think it was awesome. We've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. And the ones who weren't watching, we're going to, you know, keep telling them to go ahead and watch the session. So thank you very, very much. And looking forward to seeing you guys very soon, inshallah, in future as well.
Thank you, Samar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Yep.
Okay, have
Stay
a
well.
great day, guys.
All right.
Bye.